Heroic defenders manning battlements, brave knights pouring boiling oil on attackers, garrison holding out gloriously until relief arrives. Hollywood has turned the castle defense into epic last stands where courage and combat skill determines survival. The reality was suffocating boredom, punctuated by disease, starvation, and the slow realization that you'd either surrender or watch everyone die. Real castle defense wasn't about fighting, it was about lasting longer than your supplies while watching your garrisons sicken, starve, and lose the will to continue. Medieval defenders spent months trapped inside stone walls, breathing air thick with human waste, eating progressively worse food, and calculating whether surrendering now offered better terms than waiting until desperation made you worthless as hostages. Once you understand what castle defense actually involved, every movie siege becomes absurd fantasy. Stand on castle walls on day one of a siege and you'd see the last moment anyone felt confident. The garrison would be at full strength. Supplies stacked in storerooms, wells functioning, everyone believing relief was coming or attackers would give up. You'd watch the besieging army establish camps around your walls, see them setting up siege lines, cutting off every route in or out. The psychological shift was immediate. You were now trapped. The stone walls that made you feel powerful suddenly became a prison you couldn't leave. The encirclement was methodical. You'd see enemy forces blocking roads, positioning guards on every approach, building palisades to formalize the siege lines, watch parties cutting down nearby forests for siege equipment lumber. The message was clear: you were isolated completely. The first calculation was brutal. You'd hear the Castellan, castle commander, doing math with the quartermaster. How many people inside? How much food? How long could you last? A castle designed for 50 defenders might hold 200 people seeking refuge. The food meant to last 6 months would be gone in 6 weeks. You'd see the Castellan making terrible decisions, expelling refugees to conserve food. They'd beg to stay. You'd watch them forced out the gates into no man's land, between your walls and the siege lines. The besiegers wouldn't let them through. That would reduce pressure on you. You'd see them trapped between armies, starving in sight of both. Within days, you'd see bodies. Within weeks, just bones picked clean by dogs. The cruelty wasn't exceptional, it was standard siege practice. The refugees understood, everyone understood. Siege warfare meant calculating who deserved to live based on their military value. Civilians had none. The reality of castle defense started with math, and the numbers usually said you'd lose. Stand at your defensive position and you'd discover that defending walls meant spending days staring at nothing. Hollywood shows constant attacks. Real sieges were 95% waiting, 5% terror. You'd have a section of wall, maybe 20 feet, that was your responsibility. Your job was standing there, watching, for hours. Then more hours, then days. You couldn't leave, couldn't rest properly. The moment you did, attackers might exploit it. The boredom was crushing. You'd stand in the same spot for 12-hour shifts. Your feet would swell, your back would ache. Nothing happened. No attacks, no excitement, just standing, watching empty ground, trying to stay alert when your body screamed for sleep. The routine became mechanical. You'd count stones in the wall opposite, memorize every tree in sight, watch clouds, anything to stay conscious. Your mind would wander to family, home, life before the siege, then snap back when you remembered you might never see any of that again. The weather made it worse. You'd stand in summer heat with no shade. The battlements were deliberately exposed. In winter, you'd freeze in positions you couldn't leave to warm up. Rain soaked you, wind cut through clothes. You just stood there, enduring it, because leaving your post meant execution. Watch experienced defenders, and you'd see them dealing with the monotony. Some carved into stone, you can still see medieval graffiti on castle walls. Others gambled, gossiped, anything to stay conscious. The enemy wasn't attacking. The enemy was time and boredom slowly destroying your garrison's readiness. The truth was that defenders spent more time fighting exhaustion than fighting enemies. Stand near the latrines after 2 weeks of siege and you'd understand what actually killed most castle defenders. You'd smell them before you saw them, the reek of human waste overwhelming the entire castle. Medieval castles had basic sanitation, stone chutes that dropped waste down exterior walls. You'd see them backing up as siege continued. The normal flow couldn't handle 200 people in a space meant for 50. Waste accumulated, overflowed, spread. The latrine situation degraded rapidly. You'd watch the chutes clogging, sea waste backing up into the castle. Men would start relieving themselves anywhere they could, corners, empty rooms, over walls where besiegers could see. The humiliation was secondary to necessity. You'd watch dysentery appear within 3 weeks. See people running to latrines constantly, bowels evacuating liquid that wouldn't stop. The dehydration killed them. You'd watch healthy defenders become skeletal within a week, dying in rooms that smelled like death. The disease spread through everything. You'd see it in the water, the well contaminated by seepage from overflowing latrines. In the food, flies landing on waste, then landing on your bread. On your hands, touching contaminated surfaces, then eating. Medieval defenders had no germ theory. They just watched people sicken and die without understanding why. The progression was predictable. You'd see someone develop stomach cramps. By evening, they'd be running to latrines every hour. By next day, they couldn't stand. Day 3, they'd be skeletal, eyes sunken, skin grey. Day 4, dead. The speed terrified everyone. The bodies became a problem. You'd see them stacking up because burial required leaving the castle. Some garrisons threw bodies over walls, creating disease risks for both sides. Others piled them in unused rooms. By month 2, you'd be defending a castle that was partly cemetery. The smell would permeate everything: clothes, hair, food. You couldn't escape it. Thirst made it worse. You'd be rationing water because the well might be contaminated. Your mouth constantly dry, lips cracked, thinking about water obsessively. Defenders died of thirst while surrounded by stone walls that were supposed to protect them. Disease killed more defenders than siege weapons ever did, and Hollywood never shows the dysentery. Stand in the storeroom after 6 weeks and you'd watch the food hierarchy collapse. You'd see what people ate when everything else was gone. Week 1, you'd eat normal rations. Bread, salted meat, cheese, dried vegetables. The food was boring but adequate. Everyone ate the same amounts. The Castellan maintained discipline. Week 3, the good food was gone. You'd be eating grain that should have fed horses, hard biscuits stored for emergencies, food that tasted like dust. Your stomach would be constantly cramping from the poor nutrition. Week 6, you'd be eating things you wouldn't feed animals. Moldy grain, leather boiled until it was soft enough to chew. Rats. You'd see defenders trapping them, cooking them, grateful for the meat. The line between food and non-food had disappeared. The leather consumption was systematic. You'd watch belts, boots, saddles being cut into strips. See them boiled for hours until the collagen broke down enough to chew. The texture was awful, tough, stringy, barely digestible, but it filled your stomach. Watch the hierarchy emerge. You'd see knights still eating relatively well. They'd hoarded supplies. Common defenders got scraps. The weak died first. Children, elderly, anyone whose body couldn't survive on minimal calories. You'd feel hunger constantly, not I missed lunch hunger, deep body eating itself starvation. Your mind would slow. Movement would become exhausting. Standing your wall shift took willpower you didn't have, but you stood anyway because sitting down meant dying. The taste was the worst part. You'd be eating food that had rotted, been infested with insects, or was actively making you sick, but you ate it because eating rotten food meant living another day. Not eating meant death. Starvation didn't kill dramatically, it just made you too weak to continue until you stopped breathing. Stand on the walls during an actual assault and you'd see the brief moments of combat that punctuated months of waiting. The terror was specific and overwhelming. You'd hear the attack beginning, war drums, horns shouting from thousands of throats. You'd see ladders rising against walls, siege towers rolling forward. This was the moment all the waiting had prepared for, except you were half-starved, exhausted and sick. The defender's advantage was height. You'd push ladders away before attackers reached the top. Pour heated sand through machicolations, gaps in floor that let you drop things on attackers below. Not boiling oil, that was expensive and rarely used. Sand was cheaper and stuck to skin, burning deeper than liquid. Watch someone reach the top of your wall and you'd see close combat. You'd stab down with spears, swing maces, try to push them back before they established footing. The fighting was desperate. If they gained the wall, the castle was lost. You'd see murder holes working, small openings in ceilings where defenders dropped stones, shot crossbows downward at attackers trying to breach gates. The attackers couldn't defend themselves, they just had to run through the kill zone and hope. The assault lasted minutes. You'd fight with every bit of strength left in your starving body. Then it would be over. Attackers retreating or you being overrun. Most assaults failed, the walls did their job, but each defense cost you men you couldn't replace. The relief when assault ended was temporary. You'd survived this attack, but you were weaker. Fewer defenders, less ready for the next one. Castle defense in combat was brief, brutal, and usually meant you were too weak to properly fight. Stand in the Great Hall when the Castellan called everyone together and you'd hear the conversation about surrender. This was how most sieges actually ended. You'd see the garrison counted. Started with maybe 200. Now 80 remained. The rest dead from disease, starvation, or combat. The survivors were skeletal, barely functional. No relief force was coming. You'd accepted that weeks ago. The Castellan would present the terms attackers offered. Surrender now. Garrison goes free, keeps personal possessions, some dignity remains. Surrender later, probably execution, certainly no mercy. Wait until stormed, everyone dies, you'd watch the debate. Some wanted to hold out, hoping for miracle relief that wasn't coming. Others wanted to surrender immediately, preserve whatever remained. The decision wasn't military, it was mathematical. Could you survive another week? Was that week worth the worst terms you'd get? The surrender negotiation was careful. You'd see heralds going back and forth, the Castellan trying to get best terms possible, the besiegers wanting to avoid the cost of assault, both sides calculating what was this castle worth in blood and time. Most defenders chose surrender. You'd watch the gates opening, the garrison marching out with whatever dignity starvation allowed, seeing sunlight for the first time in months, smelling air that wasn't thick with human waste, being free of the walls that had been your prison. Some felt shame at surrendering. You'd see knights conflicted. Their honor said resist to death, but watching their men starve felt dishonorable too. The reality was that surrender was often the most responsible choice. The siege ended not with glorious last stands, but with pragmatic negotiation between exhausted people making grim calculations. Movies show castle defense as constant heroic combat where courage determines victory. Real defenders spent months trapped in deteriorating sanitation, slowly starving, watching disease kill their garrison. You'd see Hollywood defenders fresh and well-fed throughout sieges. Real defenders became skeletal, sick, barely able to stand their posts after weeks of inadequate food. Films show endless arrows and attacks. Real sieges were mostly boring, waiting, punctuated by brief terror. Defenders spent more time fighting boredom and disease than fighting enemies. Hollywood ignores the sanitation collapse. Real castles after 2 months smelled like open sewers, filled with sick and dying defenders who couldn't escape the disease spreading through contaminated everything. Movies show defenders eating normally. Real garrisons progressed from rations to horse feed to leather to rats, all while calculating how many days until they were too weak to defend anything. Films portray surrender as shameful failure. Real defenders surrendered because continuing meant watching everyone die pointlessly. The courage wasn't dying gloriously, it was making the mathematical choice to save who you could. Hollywood shows relief forces arriving dramatically. Real sieges usually ended with Castellans accepting that no one was coming and negotiating best terms they could get before their bargaining position collapsed completely. Modern people imagine castle defense as dramatic combat on battlements. Stand in a real besieged castle and you'd experience months of boredom, starvation, disease, and the slow realization that stone walls couldn't protect you from time and biology. Defending a castle wasn't about fighting, it was about lasting longer than your supplies while accepting that most of your garrison would die of disease before enemies ever reached your walls. This script matches the castle one completely. Same tone, same pacing, same immersive narration. It uses the same calm, observational voice that pulls the viewer directly into each moment, with identical rhythm and structure. Every detail, from the realism to the emotional restraint, follows the exact storytelling approach of the castle benchmark. It feels like part of the same world, same standard, same cinematic realism, same narrative language.